Hello, it's Catherine Kirby. Welcome back to Creative You Yarn Podcast, where we talk about knitting and crocheting and what's going on. And this is little Sandy, who's really coming into herself and developing her personality, aren't you? And here comes Patches the cat. They seem to all know when there's something going on. So I've been putting off doing a podcast because I have a lot of things in the works but not finished, and I just decided, hey, let's go ahead anyway. So I like to knit and crochet, and I was just fooling around trying to design a newborn sweater. And so you start at the top and have your points of increase and then pinch off your sleeve. This is worsted weight cotton, and then I did a little ruffle here. So it may end up just being a short little crop top. Go with a little pair of slacks or jeans or a little dress and put this over the top. So at this point, I'm doing a ruffle by doing 2 double crochets in each stitch, and then I have to decide if that's it or if I want to do another row or a second color underneath. So I will keep you posted the next podcast. I'd like to podcast earlier. It seems like the time keeps moving. If you've been with me for a while, you know I work on a bunch of things at one time, but then I also hit like the mother load where one week I'll get like 10 things done at one time. It's been the end of summer here. It's buggy and hot and lots of thunderstorms. And yesterday we took 2 of the grandsons out to an Italian place called Tony's that they love. And it was pouring down raining. Well, our oldest dog, who's I think trying to ease out of this life, he spends almost all his time outside under the hedges. He has a hole dug. He's very happy under there, and then he'll come out when it's time to eat. Well, while we were at the restaurant, it started pouring, and I just wanted to get home to let him in. Well, when we got home, it hadn't rained here yet. So he came in, he was happy to see the boys, and everything worked out great. This is a Stockholm hat, and because I am doing it with, it actually calls for 2 fingering weight yarns and a mohair. I'm using 1 sport weight. This is Babe Jazz, which can be used for socks, baby garments, and Katia silk mohair. Now this is a striping yarn. So I just finished with the gray section and now I'm on the pink. And knitting with the pink is so much happier because my colors are coming out a lot brighter instead of being toned down. This is a hat that the brim gets folded up, so you're probably not even going to see my brighter colors. I have 9.5 inches to knit of ribbing, and then I get into some more interesting work. So Stockholm hat, it's a pattern you have to buy. I've been reading lately, and one of the books I read was called The Bible Salesman. This man's first book, his debut, Clyde Edgerton. I really didn't know what to expect. It's about a young, innocent Bible salesman who gets involved with a con man and doesn't realize this guy's a con man. A little bit of off language with the con man, but it's really coming out of the age of innocence and lots of funny comedy type things going on, and goes back to his childhood and discussions that boys would have because they didn't really know what was what. And I happened to find this old book that I had with my things called What to Tell Your Boy. And doesn't have to say a lot more. But he says in there, you may regard the subject as one that should not be discussed, or you may intend honestly to have a talk with the boy when he is old enough. Or you may, like most parents, weakly put the question aside because you don't have the courage to face it. But anyway, he's saying boys are going to talk anyway. And this book was written in 1918. But, you know, the birds and the bees are still the birds and the bees. And it's funny because I'm reading about what young people do. The moving picture theater is just around the corner. The trolley car. But people are still people. And in this book, he gets to a hotel and it says he's washing his hangings and his crack. And that really made me laugh because that's the job of the author, to put language in a way that it hasn't been said before. I thought that I would finish my Child's Poncho. This is Lion Bonbons pack, but I don't have too much to go. I think this is a size 6, just a little bit more. This is a cotton acrylic yarn. So that's one more thing. I also finished a book by Wanda Brunstetter. She writes a lot of Amish books, and I thought that half of the book was awkward because the main character, Amanda, was all about these and thous. She gets in with an Indian woman whose language is very stilted, and the combination together I thought was really stilted and long run-on sentences, but the plot was good, and it was one of those books that I really wanted to finish to see if, you know, the lovebirds got together. And it did take a lot of courage to go across the West. And then what if your husband died, the father you were with died, and there you were alone? And right, Sandy? So it took a lot to be a woman of courage. People can't believe when they meet her that she's almost 15 years old. She's a Zit Soup. She got a very bad haircut the last time because she doesn't cooperate. And so now we're looking at asking the doctor if he will sedate her so that she can get groomed. Alrighty. In the front of our yard, we have this plant. It started out as a little perennial in a pot, and every year it got bigger and bigger until it got really huge. Somebody who had never been at our house before said, "What is that thing?" The beginning of August, it will suddenly bloom with tens of thousands of these flowers, if you can imagine. And the little blooms are really pretty too. They would be nice in a vase with other flowers. One time we were visiting a historical estate, and they had bushes and bushes of these, but I don't know what they're called. But I wait for August every year to just waiting for them to bloom, and the bumblebees like them. And then the man down the street gave me some seeds, and the seeds look like, almost like doll's eyes. They're black, and then they have a white arc, just like you would paint an eye. Well, the vine grew fast, and then these are the little flowers that come off, and some type of maybe a bean plant. But you know, those are the things when you walk outside your house in the morning, you just enjoy looking at them. You just revel in them, like, oh, look at that, it's so pretty. Sandy James, who comes into the shop quite a bit and loves to make this sweater pattern by Church Mouse Patterns called Better Than Basic Pullover, offered to make me one. So here's the neck that you can turn down or just let hang. You'll hear Marcus growling as Sandy gets near. Marcus. And this is the first one that she did in a 100% cotton yarn. She brought it in and she said, Catherine, I went up a needle size and this thing will fit me. And I said, that's okay. I don't mind a sloppy sweater I can wear in the winter with leggings. And I actually think she was disappointed. She thought, well, I will keep this and then I will have something else to work on. But so when the weather gets cooler, this is Ella Ray Phoenix, which is a worsted weight mercerized cotton. Mercerized cotton has been treated and it's has a bit of a shine to it. So back to talking about the birds and the bees, my little grandson asked his mom, do girls have puberty? Puberty? And she's like, yes. Oh, I thought they just got cooties. And, you know, we think it's cute, but kids hear these words and they, I mean, even just regular things like Sunday school, Jesus shed his blood for us. A child thinks of a shed as a building. They think very concretely, and they get to an age where they will ask, well, what does that mean? What does that word mean? But they put a lot of little things together in their heads. A drops pattern that I have been wanting to do for a long time, and I didn't read the pattern. Do you read your patterns ahead of time? You can see the neat stitch. It almost looks like a herringbone, some type of a zigzag stitch. So I kept waiting for the magic to happen. I used Taki Gemini, and I used, I think, charcoal, ash, and maybe ivory. It's a super bulky yarn, and really it is just a double crochet hat. So I don't know why it films so differently. I mean, it looks cute on, it really does. And it feels nice, and it's a merino yarn, so it's going to be nice and warm. As far as pom-poms, I must have dropped my, I wanted to ask. These are called pom-poms, pom-pons, and apparently pom-poms are also pom-pons. Don't ask me, but you get a snap, and so you sew the snap on, and then the pom-pom can be removed. So I wanted to ask, which looks better? The white with black, or so last week at the yarn shop was a bit of a challenge. The AC went out 3 days. It was 83 degrees in the shop, sweat rolling down the back, and the toilet stopped working. My poor husband was there, all the time. So now that is the black. And maybe it also depends what color of coat you have. And it isn't a solid black. It has colors in, just like the yarn does. So what do you think? Let me know. This pattern, which there's nothing fancy about it, it's just a standard hat pattern, is called Stina, S-T-I-N-A, Stina. So eventually we did get the AC working, but our neighbor who works on AC told us that it really is on its last leg, and when it stops working again, it's pretty much done. So it doesn't seem to have the power. And I heard a lady today say to her friend, oh, I can't wait to get out to the car and turn the air on. So I guess it wasn't cool enough for her. Oh, my goodness. Well, I guess as long as the heat keeps working, it is a rough time for yarn shops, yarn companies. Yarn companies are having trouble getting the yarn in. Supply companies are having trouble getting the notions in because they come from all over the world. And you know, I was thinking about this podcast, and do you just go on knitting as in the days of Noah? The Bible says people went on marrying and giving and knitting. Or do you discuss some of the very serious things going on and why it's time to, if you haven't, get serious with God? This is a pattern by Alicia Plummer. I like her designs. It's called In Stillness. I've made it before. This is a broken rib, but I don't know if you're going to be able to see it with this fuzzy yarn. This is a brushed yarn. It is brushed Stargazer, Juniper Moon. So maybe when it's finished, I think, and I don't really have any like stop dates for any of these things. I'm just merrily going along, and when they get finished, they get finished. And the OGE Whispers cardigan for baby, I am almost finished. It's very pretty. I love the Debbie Bliss Baby Cashmerino. It's the prettiest stitch definition. I have to finish my sleeves, a couple buttons. Now, even though I went down a couple needle sizes, I still have this flipping problem. What I am doing is, because I figure if it's flipping down that way, it needs to be pulled back that way. So I'm taking a crochet hook, not on the top, but between the second and third row. So this row will kind of look like it has an extra row on top of it. I just kind of invented it. It's very neat. You don't really notice it, but it is working. If you can see, that part is no longer pulling. So who knows, maybe I will invent a new a new technique. And one day at the shop, when I didn't have that with me, I started the Walligan cardigan, and that will have little owls on it. And like I said, this yarn is just such a dream to knit with that I think I was doing this on maybe a day trip, pulled it out of the shop, and we went to Port Deposit one day, and Haverty Grace, Maryland has an incredible pier that you can walk along. One way takes you into town, and you can get ice cream or food, and there's the harbor. And the other way, I'm not sure if you're just walking for pleasure, but there was a bird decoy museum at the juncture, and I kept wanting to stop. And my husband kept saying, well, we'll do that later. We'll do that later. And we finally came back and I said, Paul, I really want to go. And right as we tried the door, the gal was locking the door. She apologized. She let us in for 4 minutes. And it is amazing. I want to go back. And it's not that I'm into duck decoys, but it was such an art form. And they have glass boxes with a wax museum. They have the men bending over with their decoys. It was really nice. And I found out this lady is a knitter, and I promised to send her something from the shop. So I did that. And then another day, we took a day trip to Cumberland, Maryland, and it looks like this big rock mountain was just cut into for the highway. And my husband just loves getting out, getting on the road, and just getting out of the house. And it is fun, and it's a good marriage booster to just leave everything and go, especially when you have a lot of pets. And it can be a lot of responsibility. Even when they're good, you can wake up to messes and problems and so forth. So my favorite book that I read this past month was Merle's Door by Ted Carasot. If you are a dog lover, oh my, that book is wonderful. And at the end, when the dog was old and having problems, I came home, and that particular day, my big old dog was laying in the closet off my bedroom. He didn't come out in the morning when I got up. He was still in there. And it's that kind of situation where you don't want to tiptoe in there and wake him, because then he's out of sorts. But I was afraid he had died. And I was sitting there reading his book, sobbing and sobbing. My husband came home. Where are you crying? Are you crying over the book? And then there came Hartley out like, hey, how are you? How's your day? But it is a wonderful book. Oh, wonderful. And then the last one I've been reading is called Safety Zones by Elizabeth Shoglund, who is a counselor. And safety zones, I think, are really important today. When times are tough, when you have personal problems, you have safety zones to help you to adjust, compensate. It could be a hot shower, it could be knitting, it could be a good book, could be going out with a friend. And she makes the point that those things are just temporary things to get us through. You don't go out every night with friends. You don't spend every evening in a hot bath the entire evening. But one thing that I was thinking about was, and when I went to college, I took a class with the president of the college, who is now deceased, and he was saying that you wake up and you think, by golly, today's a day I'm gonna achieve greatness. I'm gonna write that book. I'm going to attain my dream. And then you don't. And I was feeling that way and kind of feeling down. And I came to a page in her book where Robert Brown, the poet, says, all I could never be, all men ignored in me, this I was worth to God, whose wheel the pitcher shaped. What I aspired to be and was not comforts me. Love it. And then she says, success is not limited to the fulfillment of dreams, for the dreams themselves, if they are noble, mark us with success. Our very aspiration gives meaning to our lives. I really like that, and I really needed that at this time in my life. There was also a beautiful story in here about after World War I, an immigrant came to the United States. He had lost all his safety zones, as she called it, his family, everything. And can you imagine starting out, you have nothing of your previous life, He wrote, I arrived in New York, a penniless refugee, jobless at the tail end of the Depression, an ex-attorney with the knowledge of laws no longer existing in my own country, a writer without a language. I met a woman who did not care what I had or did not have, and who perceived what I was, what I could become, if only someone believed in me. She did not tell me this. She acted upon it by marrying me. Isn't that beautiful? Oh. So let me see if I have, I'm sure I have other things, but, probably some things in another bag. Last Saturday, the Saturday before, we were closing up the shop, but I had a lot to do, and my husband had a lot to do. And a woman was trying the door, and she stopped in. She was looking for a job. Vitamin World has closed out all their stores rather than worry about complying with all of these COVID laws. But she didn't know how to knit or crochet, and even if I could afford to pay someone, it wouldn't have been a good fit. And so then, instead of locking the door, I went back to working, and I guess I did lock the door, because then I saw a lady jiggling the door, and I let her in. She used to own a very prominent yarn store and a huge weaving component, and advertised in all the major magazines for decades. And although I had never met her, my husband had several times, went to her for advice about things in the shop, and she even gave him some things and gave him advice. And so we talked for quite a while. They travel all over now in an RV. So before she left, I called for my husband in the back of the store and said, hey, Paul, there's somebody special here. So he came out, and when he saw her, his face just lit up. Oh, how are you? And he wanted to hug her, but he has a cold, and I haven't seen you in so long. And how are you? And what are you doing? And she's telling him, and where are you traveling to? And what do you like and not like? And where would you go back again? And they have this very animated talk for quite a while. And then finally she has to leave. Her husband's been in the car all this time, and he comes over and says, well, I would hug you, but I have a cold. And it was great seeing you. Thanks for stopping in. And she leaves and shuts the door, and he looks at me and says, who was that? Hilarious, right? He didn't have a clue. Well, Mary Whitener, if you're listening, hi. Mary bought some Louisa Harding Mazo yarn at the shop. It doesn't show up, but that red stripe is like a brilliant glittery. And she made the Jawbreaker shawl by Tiega Hillard. And it was so gorgeous and drapey because it's done on very big needles. And I wanted to make one. So I guess I could stop here, but I'm not even halfway. So I'm gonna see it out. I'm gonna keep going. It's gonna take me 2 skeins. It goes super fast with these big needles. And I think I said it's a free pattern. So Sharon, who's been on the show, is also making one in a different color. And so I think I'm just going to end with this Soldotna that I'm making. I did find out that's a town or city in Alaska. I did not know that. I just wasn't enjoying it and decided to just put it in the dugout for a while. So I just wanted to end with all the troublesome times and the things that are going on and the uncertainty. I feel like I don't really even know who's running the country, and I don't know a lot of things. But in the 6th chapter of Isaiah, Isaiah was a prophet. Isaiah said, in the year that King Uzziah died, I saw the Lord sitting upon a throne, high and lifted up, and his train filled the temple. Talk about glory. And above it stood the seraphims, each with 6 wings. With 2 he covered his face, with 2 he covered his feet, and with 2 he did fly. And they cried to one another, holy, holy, holy. The whole earth is full of his glory. And the posts of the door moved at the voice of him that cried, and the house was filled with smoke. And I said, woe is me, for I am undone. Basically, I'm a sinner. And that brings me great comfort, because the king had died. People were confused. They didn't know what to do. Who's going to be in charge? Who's going to run the country? But God gave him that vision to show him God is in control. Who is on the throne? God is on the throne. And if that doesn't comfort you, I'm going to pray that God brings you that comfort. So it's dark out. The stars might be out. It's time to walk Marcus. And Sandy's gone about a change. I don't know why. She was sleeping all the time, but she's deciding she would like to go, but she wants to stop and sniff everything. So that involves 2 walks, and the mosquitoes are really bad. So last week I took Marcus out. He has just a beautiful prance. He's blind, but we were on the next block down, and suddenly 2 German shepherds just came out of nowhere and just charged us. I didn't know what to do. I dropped the leash and ran for the house, and it turned out they were friendly, but I didn't know that. One came looking for me, cowering on this man's doorstep, and again, I didn't know if they were friendly or not friendly. I didn't know if they would attack my dog. It turns out they were just saying hello. And I think people that know me would be shocked that even though I love dogs, I still have a fear of dogs. I've gotten attacked several times, especially stray dogs or stranger dogs. And then there's been a skunk in the neighborhood. And so maybe I should stop taking starry night walks, but it just fills me with a sense of God's glory and his majesty when I see the Big Dipper and the North Star and all the majesty and glory. And it reminds me of Psalm 8. You know, O Lord, our Lord, how excellent is thy name in all the earth, who has set thy glory above the heavens. So with that, I hope to see you back sooner. Hope to see you with a lot of finished things. And God bless you. Keep your smile, keep your chin lifted up, and shine, baby, shine.